but the government Ministry of Corporate website by name, not by designation. Therefore, you are identified as a human being with a particular DI number out there in the open space. If you are a member of that committee, and let's say as the MD of this company, you've constituted your CSR committee, what's this committee supposed to do? Number one, it has to frame a CSR policy. That's easy. I can write a policy off the back of my head, even in my sleep. A good corporate executive writes policies, maybe with the wrong hand. I won't say left or right. He can write it off the back of his head or with the wrong hand any time of day. Corporates love policy as much as government does. They're easy to frame, easy to push out, lovely air-conditioned rooms in which to write them, good secretaries to which you can dictate, and so on and so forth. They're fun. And they also test your English skills, your communication skills. Your corporate communication department has a ball. It's lovely to get lots of policy stuff coming out of the boardroom. And because policies are so easy to write and so easy to roll out, this one is completely different. Why is it so different? This is the only policy of the company that will need to mandatorily list every single project or program that you propose to do under CSR. So what you write in those 4 or 5 pages of well-crafted sentences is fine. But the annexure which details every single activity with the amount of money that you will spend on it is the vital part of the policy. If that list is not there, the policy will not be accepted by our website. You can't push it in. Second off, you will need to have the policy passed by a full meeting of the board. If the policy is not passed by the board, it will not register as a policy. The CSR committee's troubles have just begun. Not because of the arrival of our chief guest here, but because now they are constituted. And because they are constituted, what the hell do they now do? They've crafted this policy, they've put out a wish list of things their company would love to do in CSR, and it all adds up to that lovely 2%, which brings us just above the bar. And we're all happy, let's do a quick boardroom lunch followed by a nice drinks and dinner, and let's all go home. Sadly, that won't work either. This CSR committee will now need to monitor every one of those activities which itself, in its own wisdom, has listed as part of the policy. They say, if you want to do something to yourself, just tie a noose around your own neck. Here's the opportunity. Write all the things in that policy which you know can never be done, which your company will never do, and with which you're not even interested. If you write that kind of stuff, you'll soon be in trouble, and I'll tell you how. Let's say you're a member of that CSR committee. You have a budget of, let's say, 40 crores. And let's say that that translates into roughly 100 activities. Just the ballpark figure. This 3-member committee will need to monitor all those 100 activities. How will it do that? It can only do so if there is a very strong, very robust monitoring mechanism. If that's not there, no way that this 3-member committee can ever track what's happening where. That robust monitoring mechanism has to be devised. in the company. And who will do that? The committee members need to put pressure on the managing director and the CEO to ensure that that monitoring mechanism is in place. So it could be an IT mechanism, it could be visits to the workplace, whatever else you want to do. But end of the day, you need to monitor. Therefore, for each activity, there will also be milestones, quarterly reviews, monthly reviews, half-yearly reviews, whatever you want to do. But you need to have very clear feedback on what's actually happening on the ground. Is that bad enough, or is there worse to follow? The fact is, the bad news doesn't end here. The Act also says, and this really is the clincher, that these three august personages in the committee will list, will monitor, but will also ensure that every one of those activities actually happened. If one of them doesn't happen, every one of these members is individually liable, not collectively. Therefore, there is practically no escape route. What you said in your policy, you must monitor and you must ensure that actually happens on the ground. A hard act, that's what it is. Having said all this, though, and maybe presenting a rather forbidding picture, the fact is it's not so hard. Why is it not so hard? Because you have this lovely NGO community. Remember, corporates are not expected to do any CSR work on their own. Hopefully, they won't do it. Mostly where corporates have soiled their own fingers, they've done it horribly. CSR activities are best left to those professional implementing agencies, that's what I prefer to call NGOs, who actually do this for a living. If you do it for a living, you are a professional. And because community development, working with communities, finding out what their real needs are, addressing them, working with them, really happens much easier and much better to NGOs rather than to the suited, booted executives up on the 26th floor of fancy buildings in the corporate boardroom. So usually we would expect that the classic model would be for the company to invest its resources, outsource CSR to implementing agencies, monitor them, and ensure that they deliver the goods. Now, this symbiotic relationship between the corporate and the NGO is the very obvious outcome of the whole legislation. If this doesn't happen, CSR will not happen. If NGOs do not step up to the plate, there will not be CSR. So the onus of how much we need on CSR, how much we need to get and activize them is important. So far, most NGOs have been dependent on government. Hopefully that dependency will conclude. And there will be much more of that synergic relationship between NGOs and corporate houses. In my closing statement, I'll just finish up by saying that this whole CSR is conceived as a partnership between government, the corporate world, and the NGO world. If this triumvirate doesn't actually work together, India will fail. If India fails, the first really novel experiment on CSR will also fail. The eyes of the world are on India and what we call its leap of faith. We are actually treading uncharted waters. Countries before us, Malaysia, for example, France, for example, who've tried some form of loose legislation, have really not been able to sustain it. There are the naysayers, there are the doom welcomers, there are many, many critics, and there are, of course, a humongous number of pessimists. When the bill went through the Lok Sabha, everybody said, oh yeah, that's taken them many, many years. It'll never happen in the Rajya Sabha. When it went through the upper house, they said, oh my God, in this whole session, just one bill went through the first week. Yes, it happened. And then there was this huge buzz which said, of course, it's gone through the Lok Sabha, it's gone through the Rajya Sabha, but the wise man sitting in Rashtrapati Bhavan, he will never sign it. And of course, he still did. So what I'm trying to say is, here is an opportunity. Here is an enabler. Here is a possibility when three enormous groups can come together and make a CSR for India. An Indian model of CSR, addressing our development needs, looking at what we can do for our communities, those who are really in need of efforts in health, which we're here for, in education, in the environment, for all of those things in which India is far behind the world indices. An opportunity to help those in need. Cut the legislation. Our own consciousness should tell us we corporates can make a difference. We can spend money 100 times better than government. We can bring last mile connectivities which government in 60 years hasn't been able to do. We can make our money work better. We can do to the community in an electrifying manner which others have not done. Tread that path which will give us a truly Indian model. Thank you.